Whenever I speak, I have to teach on something that the Lord's been dealing on my heart about, right? And when Tina asked me, my wife, a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago, what are you teaching on? She always tries to get the inside scoop, right? I said, I'm not telling you. She started guessing. The very first guess she made was, you're going to teach on trust, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, something like that. I don't remember. But I ended up caving. I told her. She knew that the Lord was dealing in my life about trust. And I hope that I can share something with you today that will be a blessing and a help. So just personal experience. Probably, it's almost a month ago now. I work from home most of the time, but I have to go into the office once a week. I normally go in on Fridays. Well, I had driven my truck on Wednesday to church, came back, put the truck parked it, and didn't have to drive it at all on Thursday. On Friday morning, I got in the truck to start it up, and that thing would turn over, but it never would fire up. This is a Toyota, right? Toyota's supposed to be a good truck. But I couldn't get it going. Turns out, I had some rodents that decided within just over a 24-hour period to get into the engine bay and have a feast. And they chewed up all my wiring. I was a little upset. I'm like, I need this truck. I got work to do. I got family coming into town next week. I need this truck. And I sure don't have the money that I want to spend to repair it, right? I didn't know it. I didn't know at the time what the cause was. I had a friend come over, and he was a mechanic, and he plugged his little computer thing into my truck, and he said, something's not good. Not good. He didn't know exactly what, but you're in bad shape. So I ended up having to have it towed to a shop, a friend of mine, and he looked at it and found the wire damage. And he said, Matt, this is not good. The wiring harness alone is going to be over $4,000. And that doesn't take into account the installation and labor and all that stuff. He's like, you need to make a claim with your insurance company. And I said, I work for an insurance company, and I'm a claims guy. And not only that, I'm the guy that looks at the policy contract and looks at the details of the loss and says whether or not there's coverage or not, right? And I'm like, Corey, I do this every day of my life. It's not covered. He said, well, you do what you want to do, but it's going to cost you probably $6,000 or more. And that was my pride, right? Well, this is what I do every day. And I'm like, okay, well, fine. I thought it over. I'm like, well, I'm gonna make a phone call. Actually, no. I got online to the Geico app, and I made a claim. Before that, though, let me backtrack. My wife and I were in our other vehicle, which is a 2006 Honda Odyssey, and we call it the old girl. She is old, and she is just barely getting along. We were driving it out, and she's like, we just got the money back from our tax return, and it wasn't that much, but it was a little something, and why would God do this? Why does he do this? Why do these things happen? And I can't remember what one of us said. It's like, I guess we just need to trust the Lord. And I can't remember who it was, my wife or myself, I won't say, but it was like, trusting is really hard. In fact, trusting is really, really hard. But anyways, I made that claim, and I was tempted. I talked to one of my coworkers who does the same thing that I do, and I was like, what do you think? He's like, well, it's probably not covered, but it doesn't hurt to make a claim, right? So I made the claim. I was tempted to say all of these things in my own flesh, in my own pride, right? If they didn't pay for it, if they were going to say they weren't going to pay for it, I was going to say, look, I've been with Geico as an employee for 27 years, and I've done a good job, and this is what I do, and these are all the reasons that you should pay my claim. And I could also say, well, I've been a customer of Geico for over 20 years, and I've never made an accident claim, ever. I could do all these things, and I was prepared. I was working through all of that in my mind, saying, these are my arguments, right? And I can push the buttons, and hopefully I can push this thing through. In fact, I was talking about, I know this manager, and I could know this manager, I could call these people. But God was dealing in my heart even then. He's like, look, you don't need to do all of those things. What you need to do is trust me and keep your testimony and trust in my sovereignty and my power, right? So Tina and I had talked, and we agreed, yep, we're going to put the claim through. We're not going to push any of those buttons. We're not going to try to pull any strings. We're just going to watch God. If he wants to have this taken care of by insurance, he's just going to let it flow through, okay? Again, this is what I do, okay? Every day, all day. And the insurance guy came to the shop, and he looked at it, and he said, yep, rodents ate all the wiring, and this is going to be costing you over $6,000. And Geico's going to take care of it. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Did I hear you right? Because if that would have come across my desk, I'd say, nope. But he did it. He did it, right? And the Lord started dealing with me about trust. How many of you feel like you might have trust issues too, right? I started thinking about it. I've dealt with this all my life. I am a control freak. I remember when I was like in second grade, we had an assignment, and we were paired up with a classmate. And it was a simple assignment. We just had to draw some picture, like a landscape, like a scene, right? Outdoor scene. I couldn't handle this other person trying to draw even a tree or a cloud because it wasn't how I would have drawn it. I'm like, I had trust issues even back then, right? Maybe have you been to a school activity or work activity, and it's like a team building exercise. Maybe you've gone away to a camp or a retreat or something, and they tell you to stand up on this chair or this pedestal, and then everybody else is standing behind you, right? And they call it a trust fall. Have everybody ever done that? Yeah, don't. But anyways, I never could do it. I couldn't trust people to do that, to keep me from falling. We take a trip to Iowa. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Iowa. All my family still lives there. And every year or so, we take a drive up there. It's an 18-hour drive. And most of the time over the years, my family has gone with me. So I'm driving in a minivan, and I've got my wife and several of my sons that had valid driver's license. But you think I could trust or allow them to be behind the wheel? No, I couldn't. I didn't. So I would drive it straight through, 18 hours, because I have a problem. It's trying to be in control. But I want to just kind of work through some things, and hopefully it'll be a help to you. I think it's kind of normal, maybe, to want to be in control. It's just natural. But in control of what? What are some things that you like to be in control of? Just shout them out real quick. Huh? Time. Yeah, good one.
Future.
Money. Future. Yeah. Yeah. And as they get out of the house, it makes it even more difficult, right? But God wants us, I want to share this with you, God wants us to recognize that He is in control. And that's whether or not we think that, right? Whether we think it or not, He is still in control. He is sovereign. He is in control of all. And He wants us to recognize that, but also to voluntarily turn over the reins to everything, to Him, okay? So trusting I'm just speaking for myself, but maybe you can relate. Maybe you're in this boat too. But trusting in someone else is not always easy, right? Vaughn, my youngest son, works for a landscaping company. And he tells me sometimes where his boss has allowed him to use or to drive a big truck, right? F-250 or 350 or something, and pull a big trailer with an excavator on it. And then other times how he's allowed Vaughn to operate a skid steer or an excavator or something like that. And the boss just kind of shows him some basic things and then just turns him loose. I can't do that, right? So, trusting in someone else, nothing against you, son, it's my problem, right? But trusting in someone else is not always easy, but trusting in someone you can't see can be really hard. But the crux of it is this: it gets easier as we learn more about who God is, how he works, and how he cares for us, okay? And we get to see firsthand how he is worthy of our trust, okay? It drew me up. My attention was drawn to Deuteronomy chapter 8, and so we're going to spend most of our time there today. But Deuteronomy chapter 8, I got to thinking about, this was after God had led the children of Israel out of Egypt, out of slavery in Egypt. These people had lived a long time, and many of them had not known who this God is, Jehovah, Yahweh. So part of this was this whole experience bringing them out from Egypt into the promised land was a big, long lesson about who he is, right? Just teaching them who God is. But God teaches us to trust him as we remember, okay? So we're, again, in Deuteronomy chapter 8, and we'll start in verse 2. And it says, "And thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee and prove thee, to know what was in thine heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no." Okay? And I think this is good because one of the ways that we develop trust, right? I know that I can trust my wife with certain things because we've lived together in marriage for almost 30 years now, okay? We've gone through some things. And I know that she's good at certain things, and I know that she'll continue to do them, right? So just like this, if we think back and look and see how God has worked in our lives and how he's been worthy of our trust, how he's come through, that will help us as we need to be trusting in the future. So I want you to think about how has God led and worked in your life. In the last couple of years, we sold a house and had trouble finding a new house. We had to go into a rental house for about 6 months, and then we got the place that we're at now. And to go back and think about how God worked in those circumstances, we trusted in him, and we were tempted to, in our own flesh, try to solve some of those problems. But God worked in our lives. He's like, you don't need to trust in yourself. You don't need to try to work it out yourself. But to watch him work has strengthened our faith, but also enables us to trust him more in the future. Okay? You'll see this verse 2 mentions humble. It says to humble thee and to prove thee. That's a big deal, right? Prove is to test, right? So God humbles us, and he shows us different things, and he gives us opportunities to trust him. That is a test, right? How does he do this? By teaching you what your heart is really like and what a struggle it is to obey. I just shared with you, I was open with you about the fact that I've got trust issues, right? And that's what God has shown me what's in my heart, right? I've got a struggle, and he's continually working, all right? So let's move on to verse 3 and 4. Again, it says, and he humbled thee and suffered thee. Suffered here is used as allowing, right? So, and allowed thee to hunger. You're saying God allowed them to be hungry, to go without food? Yes, he did. It says, and he humbled thee and suffered thee to hunger and fed thee with manna, which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man doth not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doth man live. Thy raiment, thy clothes, wax not old upon thee, neither did thy foot swell these 40 years. I think it's funny, the words that the Bible uses sometimes, that thy foot swell. Their feet didn't grow, right? During that time. They didn't grow out of their shoes. So I guess the question is, how has he humbled and tested you by allowing you to go through hard times? You remember that question that we were asking ourselves, Tina and I, as we drove out of our property and was wondering, why does God allow these things to happen, right? Why does God allow rodents to get into my truck and cause that much damage and cost that much? I got to think back. There's lots of things in my life, and I wonder, why does God allow certain things? My mother, she passed away of cancer when I was 16. Why would God allow that? I don't know. But I know he's good, right? He loves me. He cares for me. But those are things that I can look back on and see God work and how he was faithful, okay? Those are hard things. God allowed the children of Israel to wander through the desert where there was no water and there was no food. He allowed them to be hungry and thirsty so that he could teach them who he is, who he was, and show them how good he is. Again, by allowing us to go through hard times, demonstrating his ability to provide and teaching us spiritual truths. Again, I think sometimes we are more like the children of Israel than we care to admit. When I read through the Old Testament, I look at all the times that the children of Israel were complaining and rebellious and selfish, all of these things, and just rejected God after he'd been so good to them. And we are so much like that. And we'll look at that some more later. But if you look at Exodus chapter 16, verses 4 and 5, it says, Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them, that they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Okay, this is, again, an example of how God provided for the children of Israel when they had no food, right? He said, I'm going to rain down manna from heaven. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody had seen this before, and the people that lived then, nor their fathers, or the people that came before them. But he did it. Why did he do it? We'll get to in just a smidge. But God was teaching his people who he is, cares for them, and that they can trust him every day. Okay? I think it's important to think about. We'll get to that in just a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is not dealing with the children of Israel necessarily, but in Psalm 119, 105, it says, Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And I think about this all the time when I'm praying for God to lead and to direct in my life, right? Do you guys pray for those types of things? Give me wisdom, Lord. Show me the next step. God's funny. He will, it says, light unto my path, okay, lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. He's not shining that flashlight, not letting you see way far out in front of you. He's saying, this is what I've got for you today, okay? Just honor me and trust me for today. With the children of Israel, he gave them a measured amount of manna for each person in their household for each day. And God told them, don't keep any of it overnight, okay? Think with me for just a second. Most of you are younger folks. All of you are probably too young to have gone through the Depression. But when I was a kid, when we had Christmas, right, we'd be unwrapping presents, and my grandparents, my parents would all be saying the same thing. Save the paper. You don't know what this means, but save the paper, save the boats. Mike, you know what I'm talking about. Not that you went through the Depression. Nobody would say that, right? But you've heard that before, probably. Yeah. They had gone through some hard times economically, right? So some of these older folks now, you will know that they keep like everything, just in case, okay? Just in case. And that went with the wrapping paper. What do we do now? We get a present and we do what? Man, we just rip that thing to shreds and throw it away, okay? But no. When I was a kid, save the paper meant you just got to be really careful to slip your hand in behind that seam, not tear the paper, and then take it off carefully and fold it just so they might need it next year, right? Same thing with the bows. A lot of us nowadays can't understand this, but that's how things were. So think about that, and these people, the Israelites, they had been going hungry, right? They were probably afraid that they might continue to go hungry. So they would have been tempted to go out and gather as much as they possibly could, right? In their own strength, their own reasoning, to do that. But God says, no. I want you to just gather enough for today. Why would he do that? Because he wants us to trust him. How often? Every day. Yeah, all day. Every day. If I'm God, I'm telling the children of Israel, I'm telling us, I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to take care of you, okay? I'm going to do it today, even maybe this morning. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take care of you again tonight. I've got you, okay? Tomorrow, don't worry about it. I have made this promise to you, and I'm going to take care of you tomorrow, okay? The same is true for us. Now, we don't get to wake up and look outside and there's manna on the ground, okay, for us to go out and pick up. But God is faithful, right? God's faithful. All right. Exodus chapter 16, verses 12 and 15. It says, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. What is murmurings? Complaining. It's that mumbling, right? Have you ever been in I know we have a lot of college students here, but have you ever been in a class and maybe the professor gives an assignment that you weren't expecting, and maybe it's really laborious, and the whole class is just like, oh man, you got to be kidding me, right? Do you guys do that kind of thing? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, things haven't changed then too much. But they were murmuring. Okay, I've heard the murmurings and the complaining of the children of Israel. Remember what they were complaining about. They were hungry. They're in the desert. Is that a reasonable thing? I just want to eat. Okay. And God's telling Moses, speak unto them, saying, at evening, or in the evening, you shall eat flesh. That was quail. We'll find it in a different passage. And in the morning, you shall be filled with bread. That's the manna. And you shall know what? That I am the Lord your God. He's teaching these people who he is, right? He's not just teaching them that he is a God and yeah, you should worship me. No, he's teaching them who he is and that I am yours, okay? and I'm going to take care of you. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, it is manna, for they wist not or knew not what it was. And Moses said unto them, catch this is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. Okay? Again, there's lots of things that we can do when times get tough in our own strength, in our own thoughts, and our own rationale to try to take care of our own needs. And should we be busy? Should we be working? Yes, God expects us to do that. But God was doing this specifically that they would know that it was Him who did it, and as the Lord had given it to them. So as I look back on this issue with my truck, I can specifically say this, right? I can say, this is the truck which the Lord has repaired. That builds my faith, and it helps me in the future. It teaches us that He is the one who is good and that cares for us. All right. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 5, it says, thou shalt also consider thine heart, that as a man chasteneth his son, so the Lord thy God chasteneth thee. Okay? This is talks about punishment sometimes, right? Chasten is to punish. Consider your heart, how you failed. Man, I look back and I'm like, oh, big fail. You ever look back and with regret on decisions that you made? Bad decisions? How you failed, how you've been corrected, how you've learned. So consider your heart and how God has brought you through those things. I want to look at Jeremiah chapter 15, verses 5 through 10 real quick. It says, thus saith the Lord, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departeth from the Lord. Okay, let's stop there for just a second in verse 5. He's saying, it's not good, okay, for man to trust in man, for you to trust in yourself or to trust in another man, to trust in, and it says, maketh flesh his arm, or trying to do things in your own strength, okay? And whose heart departeth from the Lord. For he shall be like the heath in the desert. I had to look this up. I'm like, what is he talking about? A candy bar or what? If it was, it'd be melted. We all know that. But he wasn't. Heath is like a bush, a desert bush. It'd be like a heath, a desert bush in the desert, and shall not see when good cometh, but shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness, in a salt land, and not inhabited. So let's get this picture, right? It's just a desert bush. It's barely surviving, right? It's not thriving, right? If it's in a desert, it doesn't have a lot of shade. It doesn't have water. All of these things that it needs. It's barely surviving. Okay. Verse 7 says, blessed is a man that trusteth in the Lord, and whose hope the Lord is. For he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, and that spreadeth out her roots by the river, and shall not see when heat cometh. But her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful or worried or concerned in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. Let's stop there for just a second. Do you see the contrast there? Okay, how the person that trusts in man, in man's wisdom and man's strength, is a bush in the desert, is barely surviving, if that, versus somebody that trusts in the Lord, and the Lord is their hope. They're like a tree that's planted by an endless supply of water in the river. That tree that's by the water doesn't even know when the drought comes. Doesn't even make any difference. It's not concerned about it. It says, shall not be careful or concerned in the year of drought. Phrase before that says, shall not see or even know when the heat cometh. Doesn't even feel it, okay? And it continues to yield fruit even in the drought time, right? Understand the difference there. And then in verse 9, it says the heart. Why is it going from there to the heart? It's talking about trust, and now it's going to the heart. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, the Lord, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his doings. So God sees how we trust him or we don't trust him. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing what I need to do. I'm trying to be faithful. But God reveals to us when that's actually not true. So part of it, teaching us to trust him involves reflecting, right? Next, it teaches us through resolving, okay? Resolve to obey. If you understand this word, resolve, it is it's a firm understanding. It is, I am determined, okay, to obey. In verse Deuteronomy 8:6, it says, therefore shalt thou keep the commandments of the Lord thy God, and to walk in his ways and to fear him. It's an encouragement. Listen, continue to do what's right. Continue to obey. So use life's lessons to encourage yourself to walk in fear as you move forward in life, right? You've learned these lessons in the past. We've talked about how the Lord will sometimes chasten when we disobey. We also see how God has brought us through when we've needed to trust him, and he has been faithful. We can use all of those life's lessons as we continue through life. And then lastly, through Revelation, God's warning of temptations to come. And this is where my study had originally, or my thought process had really started, because I recognized how in my life, when times were tough, when I was in a tight spot, I would all of a sudden, man, my prayer life was much, much better, right? I was in his word more. But when things were good, when I got through those, and God brought me through, there's no doubt, things got easier. What did I have a tendency to do? To stop trusting, stop depending, stop praying, and stop being in his word like I knew I should be. I think that's one of the reasons why God may have been teaching the children of Israel to trust on him every single day with the manna, because it is a process, right? If God would have just given them an endless supply of manna to begin with, right? Thanks, great, we're good now. We're good. And they wouldn't have to trust him every day. But this passage it made an impact on my life. I hope it does for you too. Deuteronomy 8, verses 7 through 9. We're going to continue on, so just keep following. So for the Lord thy God bringeth thee into a good land, in a land of brooks of water, of fountains and depths that spring out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley and vines and fig trees, pomegranates, a land of oil, olive, and honey, a land wherein thou shalt eat bread without scarceness. Thou shalt not lack anything in it. A land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills thou mayest dig brass. And this is God speaking about the land, the promised land that God was bringing them out of Egypt into the promised land. They're getting closer, and he's like, this is what it's going to be like. I'm going to give you the best. It's already going to be there. It's beautiful. It's full of natural resources. How about that? Okay. Verse 10, when thou hast eaten and art full, Then shalt thou bless the Lord thy God for the good land which he hath given you. Let's stop there, right? That's great. That makes complete sense. I've gone through the desert. It was hard. I was hungry. I was thirsty. We had to walk a lot. It was hot. God provided manna, and I don't know how long they ate manna, 40 years. It was a long time eating the same thing, okay? But it was food. Be thankful, right? And then he's telling, I'm going to give you all of these good things when we get to the promised land. And when you get there and you eat and you experience God's goodness, you're going to bless him, right? You're going to praise him for all that he's done. It says, bless the Lord thy God for the good land which he hath given to you. But verse 11, look out. Beware, okay? That is, be warned, okay? That thou forget not the Lord thy God in not keeping his commandments and his judgments and his statutes, which I command thee this day. Lest, when thou hast eaten and art full, and hast built goodly houses, and dwelt therein, and when thy herds and thy flocks multiply, and thy silver and thy gold is multiplied, and all that thou hast is multiplied, then thy heart be lifted up, or I get proud. I did it on my own, right? And thou forget the Lord thy God, which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage, talking about the slavery that they were in. Verse 15, who led thee through the great and terrible wilderness, wherein were fiery serpents and scorpions and drought, where there was no water, and brought thee forth water out of the rock of flint, who fed thee in the wilderness with manna, which thy fathers knew not, that he might humble thee, and that he might prove thee, to do thee good in thy latter end. And thou say in thy heart, my power and the might of mine hand hath gotten me this wealth. But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he sware unto thy fathers, as it is this day. And it shall be, if thou do at all forget the Lord thy God, and walk after other gods, and serve them, and worship them, I testify unto you, or against you this day, that ye shall surely perish. As the nations which the Lord destroyeth before your face, so shall ye perish, because ye would not be obedient unto the voice of the Lord your God. So again, what do we learn here? It's God's warning. It's his revelation to the children of Israel that lives where it's easy is a tendency to draw us into complacency, laziness, self-sufficiency, pride, and disobedience. Look, it's not unusual for you to think this way, right? As an example, I'm not talking specifically about myself, but this could be you. Look, I worked hard and I paid my own way through college, and I studied hard, and I was at the top of my class, and I communicated well, and I got a good job, and I continued to work hard and be innovative, and now I've been promoted, and I'm making X amount of dollars. Good for me. It's all within my power and my mind, my reason, my hard work. And that's the temptation, right? I know a lot of you are college students. Some of you are in the workforce. The fact is that none of us could do anything of those things if it were not for God's grace. Whether it just be the breath that he gives us, the health and the strength for each day. Look, there's friends of ours that are struggling to make ends meet because one of them is unhealthy, right? Can't go to work. It's It's part of life. Life can be very tough, but God is in control of all, right? And he deserves the praise. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 10 through 12 gives us another picture of this. I think it's really good. And I need to wrap up. Where'd all the time go, Kim? And it shall be when the Lord thy God shall have brought thee into the land which he sware unto thy fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give thee great and goodly cities which thou buildest not, and houses full of all good things, and thou fillest not, and wells digged which thou diggest not, vineyards and olive trees which thou plantest not. When thou shalt have eaten and be full, then beware lest thou forget the Lord, which he brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. Lots of applications here, okay? And as in the next session, when we have breakouts, I'd encourage you maybe to kind of go through some of these. But just like the children of Israel, understand that God is teaching us to trust him, okay? No different. This is something that all of us walk through each day. When times are good and easy, we tend to fall away as we trust in ourselves. And when times are lean or we're in a tight spot, we'll tend to seek his help. But God does not promise us a life of ease. Rather, in the New Testament, he calls us to take up our cross. It's different. I wish we had more time to talk about that. But it's not always, in this, we've been talking a lot about God's provision, right, this morning for the children of Israel, but it's not always about provision or protection. What is it? It's about us acknowledging that every good gift comes from above, from the Lord, okay? And that we're nothing and that he is everything. Remember that those passages we first talked about, we're to humble his people, right? They were to take them down from the pride that they had. He is everything. It's about knowing that he will never leave us nor forsake us. It's about learning that it's not about us. It's all about him and his story. Recognize that we're on this life, on this earth for just a short amount of time, okay? But God's had a story to tell from Genesis up until Revelation. It's about him and his story. It's about God molding us into his image. He takes these hard times and these things that we go through and he changes us and he makes us more like himself. He moves into our lives in unconventional ways, okay? Why? So that we know it was him and not ourselves. It's not our earthly wisdom. It's not our hard work. It's not our 401k. It's not our science or our medicine. It's him. So as we close this morning, I want you to look at or think about all of the unconventional ways that God worked, okay? How you could, because of this, you cannot, no one can say it wasn't him, right? Think about the plagues of Egypt. How about the parting of the Red Sea? Let's talk about for Jericho, right? The children of Israel conquered Jericho. They couldn't just go in and attack it, right? That seems like the normal thing to do, or siege it or something. But no, God's telling them, I just want you to walk around the city for 6 times, and on the 7th time, I want you to shout really loud, and I'm gonna let you have the city, right? The walls are gonna come down. That's God. No earthly general, warrior would have come up with that plan. How about Gideon? If you heard the story of Gideon. Gideon had all these men. God says, no, that's too many. That's one of those things. You never have too many men when you go into battle. God says, no, that's too many. If you had too many men, then you would win, but it wouldn't be in my power. I want everybody to know that you're going to win this battle because it's me. It's me. And then think about David's sling, David and Goliath, right? Who would have picked a little shepherd boy with a sling to defeat a champion warrior giant? Okay? It was God. It was God. So he's constantly teaching us who he is. He's the great I am. God is everything we need. And he is always right on time. I'm going to, real quick, that's a hard one because I always want him to hurry up, right? Come on, let's go. We got to go. But he's always right on time. He's always good. even in the trials. And the Lord knows that we need trials to grow our faith. Okay. Thank you for your attention this morning. I pray that was a blessing to you.